Those are the headlines, our top focus. Madagascar's ousted president, Andry Rajoelina, has confirmed for the very first time that he fled the country between 11th and 12th October, following explicit threats to his life. His departure came after weeks of intense protests and a military-led power grab that has plunged the island nation into a crisis. The presidency claimed that the threats against Rajoelina were extremely serious, marking a turning point in the political turmoil. As Rajoelina's departure deepens the uncertainty, Colonel Michael Randrianirina, the military leader, is now set to be sworn in as Madagascar's new transitional president. According to a statement issued by the country's new leadership, the swearing-in ceremony will take place on October 17th. The colonel's appointment marks the beginning of the refoundation of the Republic of Madagascar, a move that signals the country's attempt to stabilize amid mounting political unrest. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Mark Sutherland, geopolitical commentator, joining us from London. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. What we've essentially witnessed practically is a coup take place, considering the fact that an elite military unit, the GAPSAT, had switched sides, and their leader has now become the transitional leader. Now, historically and contextually speaking, coups have resulted in greater instability in African nations. For instance, we've seen what's taken place in Sudan, what's taken place in Nigeria, Mali, Burkina Faso. Now, in your assessment, what implications does this now have for the island nation?
Yeah, good to be with you. You make a very wonderful point in regard to what happens when there is a coup and the instability that then is created, which is extremely sad. The context here, we've got to remember that it was a French colony up until 1960. Then it was given its independence. If you read around what's happened in Madagascar and look at the other news reports, there's an interesting comment when they talk about this was coup led by Gen Z and people that were not happy with what was going on in Madagascar, the accusations of problems with water, power, electricity that's being turned off. And then there's another comment there in various reports saying that they'd watch what's recently happened in Nepal, what's recently happened in Sri Lanka. And I think that is really, really important to look at. And of course, without sounding like some, old granddad, the fact is that young people, of course, they've got access. Many people have got access to phones, access to the internet. They can see what is happening around the world, but they also then feel that what is happening on the ground within their own countries is not benefiting them at all. So the sense of frustration. As you referred to in coups, and I'm deeply saddened by that when these things happened, because particularly within Africa, as it's so well resourced, the African Union, I understand, has then suspended Madagascar because of this coup. And as you've just said in that report, that the colonel will be sworn in. We don't know if this is then going to settle things down. The previous president has then left, I believe, via with the influence of France, and then has left because he's feeling threatened for his life. Pia.
Indeed, and I wanted to also understand what risks might Madagascar now face, especially during this transitional period.
Well, it's off the coast of Mozambique, nearly touches Tanzania, at the bottom of Tanzania. The reason why I say that, if you then look in that region, historically, it has then become, if we look in the past, to Russian communist influence as well. So there has been these power plays that have gone on within that region on the mainland of Africa. All I can say is, I'm not avoiding the question. The sad thing is, we have to wait. We have to wait and see. And as you've said, it's very interesting how CAPSAT have then decided to then, inverted commas, switch sides. We're going to have to wait and see how this is going to plan out. But when you've got citizens like has happened in other countries recently, when we look at Nepal, look at Sri Lanka, and people then feel that their own living standards are not improving, that they're concerned, understandably, about water and electrical supplies, then this raises a lot of questions, and then people are then going to their leadership and saying, why aren't you addressing this? Then in their own eyes, if they feel that these are not addressed, in their interpretation, they feel that their leaders are then financially benefiting, then it is going to cause unrest. But Pia, I think it's time will tell when this kernel is put in, and then is he actually going to put the citizens of Madagascar first and to improve conditions there, Pia?
Indeed, requesting you to stay on with us. We're tracking some other crucial developments as far as Madagascar is concerned. The African Union has suspended Madagascar with immediate effect following this military-led coup. The coup, led by an elite army unit, CAPSAT, came after the impeachment of President Andry Rajoelina. The African Union Commission Chair, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, has confirmed the suspension, marking a dramatic escalation in the crisis. This follows the confirmation of Colonel Michael Randrianirina as the new president by Madagascar's top court. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Mark Sutherland. I want to understand from you, what message does this move by the African Union send, especially with regards to the question of the legitimacy of Colonel Randrianirina's government?
Well, as we were just talking about, and you raised your first question there when you were talking about what happens in regard to coups and the benefit of that and benefits of the citizens within those countries, it doesn't seem to happen. And the African Union, I believe, my own interpretation of this, it's their way of making that point, and their concern. That is the only way that they then feel that they can do that. And of course, where an African, what is the term union, where all these African countries coming together under one banner, hopefully in the fact that they're trying to do the best for their citizens within that country. But as you know, the region, as you've mentioned, where coups have gone on, for argument's sake, like Sudan, and how and the consequences of these actions. Hence why, my interpretation, why the African Union have said what they have said. Pia.
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us as we track further updates. We're shifting our focus, viewers, away from Madagascar towards Kenya. The body of Kenya's revered opposition leader, Raila Odinga, has now arrived in Nairobi from India, where he passed away on Wednesday, reportedly from a suspected heart attack. A large crowd gathered at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to honor Odinga, who, despite running unsuccessfully for the presidency 5 times, was a powerful figure in Kenyan politics for decades. In response to his passing, President William Ruto has declared 7 days of national mourning. Odinga's body will be taken to the parliament, and public grieving spaces have been set up across Nairobi. A state funeral will be held on Friday, followed by a burial service in his birthplace in Western Kenya on Sunday. Meanwhile, Kenyans gathered in streets of Nairobi to mourn the passing of Raila Odinga. People have gathered in Nairobi to mourn the death of former Kenyan Prime Minister Raila Odinga. The 80-year-old passed away while receiving medical treatment at a hospital in India. Mourners carried twigs as they marched, reflecting the emotional impact of his death. Listen in.
Raila has been a very key factor. We want to say that we were very sad about his demise, and what we can say for now, we are so much heartbroken about his death. And what I want to say is to tell my fellow Kenyans we remain calm.
Raila Odinga, I remember him as a man who has no any fear. Number 2, he's a man who has brought in multipartyism through democracy and the new constitution 2010.
We have lost a very great leader. We have lost a very great leader of democracy, a person who has nurtured many politically, a person who has brought many to life politically, a person who has made Kenya to develop, to prosper politically in terms of democracy.
Joining us on the broadcast is Professor Duncan Ojwang, Professor of Constitutional Law in Kenya. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Kenya is at the moment mourning the loss of one of its most towering leaders, the former Prime Minister. Although he ran 5 times for the presidency, he did not ascend to that position, but he's left a lasting impact. I wanted to understand from you, what is his legacy in the electoral sphere and how might it influence the upcoming elections?
Thank you very much, and thank you for India for taking care and trying to do the best India could in terms of medicine to save former Prime Minister Raila. I think the theme that runs on Raila Odinga is that he always contested. He might disagree with the institutions like of election, the court, when he petitioned court, the police, but he always fell back to protect them as the safeguard for democracy and rule of law. In other words, he believed in constitutional takeover of power, and severally he has rejected attempts to do extra-constitutional means as a way of taking over power, as urged by his supporters. And sometimes the country is split down the middle, and it could have been very easy for him to push and like other African countries, to take power unconstitutionally because of public agitation, including even picketing and demonstrations. But he refused that. He saw that as a path that will set Kenya into the downward spiral of illegal coups. And through that, you can see that Kenya has remained as an oasis of peace in the region. Yes, with all its challenges, yes, with all the contested election, but still after election, Kenya is able to bounce back with camaraderie and with the collegiality and with patriotism, and not slide to chaos unlike other African countries that we have seen. And therefore, that is, he has secured democracy by being the foremost competitor. And even when he had a feeling, and his supporters had a feeling that the election were not fair, he had rejected the path of extra-constitutional means of gaining power, and remained on the narrow and democratic way. Finally, you know, he has a scar to show for it. He was detained for 9 years, tortured for 9 years. He has bruises to show, and that is fighting for the Kenya multi-party when we had a single party, so that we can have multi-party and election and plural election and alternative voice. So he was tortured, he has suffered, he grew old, but he still had that as his north, and fairly pushed Kenya towards better democracy. But finally, always so forgiving, willing to look back and take whoever's won, whether he does not believe they won fairly, with both hands, and say, let's move this country forward. And through that, it's a study that other African countries now are looking at Kenya, that how do you almost get to the chaos or to civil war, but you bounce back. Raila Odinga has been the magic of accepting whoever becomes the leader and working with them for the sake of the country.
Indeed, I also wanted to understand how might Raila Odinga's death now affect the future of Kenya's opposition politics and the delicate balance of power as well.
Yeah, and so you are right that people feel sense of loss. His supporters feel sense of loss. But I think as an old wise man, and the leader of his people, it became very clear in the last few months that he wanted to leave them in the government and not in the opposition. He wanted them to work for united Kenya and not for disenfranchised Kenya. And because of that, he was able to, the famous etymology of shaking hands. He was able to shake hands with people that were rivals, including the current president. He was able to use familiar words, my brother, my younger brother, calling him my younger brother, and the president calling him my older brother. So that camaraderie is why even his mourning is very peaceful. Mm-hmm. And even in future, I think that the task is set and the ball is in the current president court and the leaders, all of them really, that unite Kenyans. We are one people. We want fair development. We want fair opportunities. We want freedom. We want to be vocal but not be murdered or tortured. Mm-hmm. And so he set an agenda that his party agreed to work with the ruling party on 10 points agenda, and that was to unite Kenya. And so I see his eldest brother, who is also a politician. He has stepped on that shoe temporarily, and so I see them still walking that line of working with the government, and I don't see why they will depart from that even in 2027. And if that is the case, as most of them have indicated, then you can see why 2027 might be the most uniting and the most decisive election for the government, because it will have in one side the ruling coalition, and on the other side the Raila supporter, which have been the bulwark of opposition, are coming together and forming a team, a united team before the general election. That to me seems like the path Kenya is probably going to take, and that become then unbeatable if you see, because those who remain behind now in the name of opposition are a little bit greyhorn and not to the stature of Raila and to the command that he does. And so the state is at the center. And even if you look at his burial committee, and even if you look at the team that came to pick him in India, it's a mix of the people of working across aisle, because his agenda was uniting. And I see that going up to the election, with the president now running for second term under the same platform and ban.
All right, with that, I would like to thank you, sir, for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus away from Kenya towards what's taking place in DRC. Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Rwanda-backed rebel group M23 have agreed to create a joint body to monitor a future permanent ceasefire, a step that is being seen as crucial to ending years of violence in the country's eastern part. The Congolese government spokesperson Patrick Muyaya has stated that the agreement was signed in Doha after Qatar's mediation. M23 spokesperson Lawrence Kanyuka has confirmed the signing and called the ceasefire as a crucial development. Now, the body will consist of representatives from Congo, M23, and the 12-country International Conference on the Great Lakes region will also be involved and will be responsible for overseeing the implementation of a permanent ceasefire, investigate reports of violations, and help prevent renewed fighting. This week, the Congolese army had accused M23 fighters of killing 39 civilians in Rutshuru territory between 6th and 12th October. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Mark Sutherland, geopolitical commentator. Now, we've seen the eastern part of the DRC being embroiled in persistent instability for decades now. Could this body's creation then lead to relative stability?
Well, let's pray and hope so, Pia. I mean, the bottom line is that according to various reports, when you read that, you analyze that, that this is 7 million people have been displaced as part of this in recent years. And you quite rightly raise the fact that this has gone on for decades. I mean, again, the DRC is very interesting. Certain parallels here with what you were saying about Madagascar from a historical point of view when it gained independence, and again Soviet Union interference, and then with its history, with this to and fro between going to a socialist, going to a socialist model. We pray and hope so that this will lead to this. I mean, it's interesting that there was a deal signed in Washington, I think, in June, according to the parties. Then it didn't go far enough. Again, and analyzing this, it's interesting that the name of Qatar then comes up, where it had been mediating and brokering this deal, this ceasefire, this conversation between the government authorities there and between the M23 rebels. And according to some reports, you're looking at nearly 100 different groups involved in this. I mean, the DRC as a country geographically is massive, but any move to end the displacement of people, the appalling, sad when are killed, is always a good thing. You ask the question, will it last? And that, of course, is the issue. You make these decisions. Can you then build on that peace?
Indeed. And what's interesting is the M23 operates mainly in the provinces of North Kivu and South Kivu. North Kivu, as we know, is a mineral-rich region. So in your assessment, how does the economic significance and the fact that this region in itself is home to so much natural assets then contribute to the violence that we witness here?
Yeah, absolutely. They are extremely mineral rich, like a lot of Africa is then being able to be in a position where they can use that to the benefit of the people that actually live in the country. You're absolutely right in then pinpointing that part of why, in regard to economics, and of course Rwanda, we have to say, in regard to how it has also been backing the M23 rebels, and then that group then wanting their own separate state. You raise those issues because I think for so many situations around the world, yes, we end up looking at it economically. It's just very sad that these minerals, all these other resources, are then not brought to the table to be used to the benefit of the individuals, the citizens that actually live there. And this we have to put in a context of the fact that this has been going on for a long time, Pia.
Indeed, as you've mentioned, we do know that the conflict in Congo is going on for a long time. We've been discussing Rwanda. The M23 is backed by Rwanda at large and elements over there. It's a part of the Congo River Alliance, but it's not just Rwanda that has a hand in the conflict that we're seeing in eastern DRC. We're also seeing Uganda, the Allied Democratic Forces, Islamic State-linked rebels are also involved over here. So how does the involvement of Uganda-based extremist groups then complicate the situation even further?
Well, absolutely, because we could also then talk about what's been, as we have previously on the channel, by looking and focusing on what's been happening in Nigeria. Very often, unless you and I are having these discussions, unless we're focusing, which you're doing, on what is actually happening in Africa, in that region, the news of this does not reach us. And it also doesn't reach us, as you've explained, the complexities of this. If you are then looking at other, as you've just said, Islamic groups and their involvement in these countries, because this is profoundly serious. We've got this ideology that is then behaving in a particular ways and coming against citizens of various countries in this way. We, as I said, we look at what's been happening in Nigeria between Boko Haram and its attacks on Christians within Nigeria. All of this really has to be really drilled down and exposed and talked about. And I also think it's on it's precedent on the African Union to raise all these issues if it is willing to do so, and to talk about all this is very important. Pia.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. Shifting focus to Northern Africa. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and the Sudanese military leader General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan have held talks about restoring security in Sudan. Al-Burhan, who presides over Sudan's Sovereign Council, met with el-Sisi in Egypt's El Alamein city. They discussed the ongoing conflict in Sudan between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces and efforts to alleviate the humanitarian suffering in the country. Now, the two sides have agreed on the vital need to provide support and assistance to the Sudanese people, given the fact that severe humanitarian conditions caused by the ongoing conflict have resulted in complications as far as aid deliverance is concerned. With us on the broadcast is Dr. Satoru Nagao, fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining us from Tokyo. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. I want to understand from you, what impact could these talks have on the ongoing conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and the RSF?
For Egypt, Sudan is very important because supply of the water rely on the Sudan as a route. So all water came from other countries through Sudan to reach Egypt. And Egypt is a source of water, Sudan is. So if the Sudan's government is stable, the water supply is also no problem. But if the Sudan is under the civil war and the infrastructure is destroyed, such kind of things has happened, of course Egypt start to worry about water supply through Sudan. And at the same time, Egyptian country has already accepted more than 1 million refugees from Sudan since the civil war has happened in April 2023. So that's why due from this situation, of course, Egypt should want the stable situation in Sudan. And Egypt's stance toward Sudan is very stable indeed. Since April 2023, the civil war has started. Egypt supports the military side, army side of the Sudan. So that's why in this case, the Egyptian government meets the chief of the army of the Sudan. That is logical. This is the consistency of the Egyptian government diplomatic policy towards Sudan. But at the same time, interesting difference in this meeting is the army chief of the Sudan can leave their country even if the civil war is ongoing. This means that even if the leader leave from the Sudan, still the Sudan situation is not easy to change. So that's why he can leave. That is an important thing. So there's a possibility after they take the Khartoum in the March this year. And recently they agreed the ceasefire in the western side of the Darfur city, capital Darfur city. Such kind of situation affects the decision of the army chief of the Sudan. He can leave the country, but it is possible. That means that civil war is some certain stable situation has happened. That's why he can leave. So under such kind of situation in the near future, the Egyptian wished the Sudanese army to take over the all of the Sudan. When it's a matter of concern, but anyway, Egypt wish this, and the Sudanese army chief expects the situation is a little bit stable. That is the reason meeting has happened. That view from the situation, that is the current situation, I think.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Nagao, for taking our time sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to what's taking place in Cameroon. Heavy security was seen after unrest following Cameroon's 12th October presidential election. Spent tear gas canisters litter the ground. Official results are expected by the 26th of October, with the electoral body and court yet to announce outcomes. Opposition candidate Chiroma has declared himself the winner on Facebook, stating that his victory is clear analysts predicted a win for incumbent Paul Biya, the world's oldest president who's ruled the country since 1982. 11 opposition candidates have contested this particular election. Chiroma, a former government spokesperson who left Biya to run, had strong opposition backing. Cameroon faces challenges including secessionist conflicts and corruption that hamper development despite rich resources. In 2018 itself, opposition leader Maurice Kamto claimed victory but was arrested, leading to protests and mass detentions as well. That's a wrap, viewers, on the Africa Bridge. We'll continue getting more news and updates for you. Stay tuned on NewsX World.